When I think of Ares versus Phobos, I think of that Phobos has all the greater skills or abilities. He's stronger, he's faster, he's fucking crazy, he's got everything, he's got all the pieces you think would make a greater warrior than his father Ares. But Ares is the god of war. He has the spirit, the spiritual dominion over war that Phobos doesn't have as much of. And the way I would explain that is to say that if you were to say that Ares is not Phobos' father, they're two mortals of the same age, and they're in training together. In a training environment, isolated from doing something that has been an ancient part of every generation, every life cycle activity that does something important that has value, that therefore activates certain emotions or feelings in the soul, isolated from that as training is, Phobos would outperform Ares. Ares is second best to Phobos. He's bested by these mortal analogs to his son. But when put in an actual environment, Phobos succumbs to emotional exhaustion. There's a special environmental factor there is a special environmental factor that being in a real non-practice environment has, that Ares is already is the most cost-effective in, so he doesn't get mentally exhausted. That all of your other abilities, you have the strength, the speed, the navigation, the instincts, everything else you need. But if all of that depends on if you get emotionally exhausted by just being working against the grain, that in order to exist within any big ancient activity, you must fuse those abilities. You must exist in a very specific state. It's not good enough to just have the skills. There is a natural biological condition you must be in. And so these mortals must fuse those abilities into one, blend all these colors together into one unit of war. To turn all these individual notes into a song, to get the style right. Ares is the best at that style. So he's got the spiritual shark skin in the ocean of war. He's got the least drag, so to speak, in the spirit world. Even though he may not be stronger or a better fighter than his son, ultimately he's got an advantage that's a very important one. And that is that his spiritual state is more in war than Phobos is, who is the god of fear and loss. And that being in that, to interact with the natural living mechanisms of the world while in war, not practice, you have to be fused, you have to be in this special biological state with all your abilities. And to do that requires that you have a special emotional state. And doing that comes with a spiritual cost. You have to pay a psychic rent or something to that effect. Ares has the greatest ability to pay that rent. That to pay that rent requires a very special war muscle in the soul, and Ares has got the biggest war muscle. Nobody is more spiritually war than Ares. So he can pay that rent, and so he's got this. Phobos has the best guys, the best equipment, but if you can't afford a space, then you just can't operate. You got to be able to have a space, and you have to have a space with the circuitry, because you got the best equipment, you plug it into this fuse, going to blow the fuse. Ares doesn't always run the best equipment or have enough people, or Ares doesn't always have the best equipment or have the most people or have the best tactics or be the strongest, but when he does, he plugs it in, no problem. No fuse breakages. But when he does, he plugs it in, no problem. No fuse outages. And that's how I'm trying to explain. My best way of trying to explain this is that even though the gods would never get emotionally exhausted, they have unlimited power, unlimited energy. When I think of Ares versus Phobos, so I would say that Ares, if Ares and Phobos were Homo sapiens, Ares' soul was born ready to go, fused into this organic state that works naturally with the environment, the spiritual environment of war, in such a way that it is more cost effective. Where Phobos is prone to emotional exhaustion. So even though Phobos at first he's performing better, there's a question of how long can he keep that up? Because all your other abilities depend on this one thing, as it often is in life. And that's a way I try to explain how Phobos can have superseded his father, yet still somehow be subordinate to him. That's the best I can do. And when I think of Phobos fighting Ares, I think of such as in actual life where, especially when you're an outcast like me, you do all this training, you do everything you can, you become the best, even though you supersede the other people. But then you go and you find, oh, now I have performance anxiety. And all of that was for nothing. All that practicing, all that making sure I got it just right, and then when I'm in a real situation, I can't do it. That's such a frustration. Why would life pull the rug out from underneath me like that? Why is it just not enough to have done all of this? And the reason why is because life is meaningless. And it's made of inanimate objects flying in every direction. So that produces an endless number of potential unforeseen interferences or factors or obstacles, adversities to interfere, to pull the rug out from underneath you. And I'm putting Phobos as representing that. Even though they're both gods, they're both equally invincible, I'm having them symbolize, where Phobos symbolizes mortal me, where you not only have to learn to do this thing, learn the action that accomplishes this task, you then have to be worried about, well, what do I do when the stage fright comes on? And even if you master that, you go and then you find out, oh, there's racism. So now they don't want to let you in because of racism. Who do I have to talk to? I have to complain to the news agencies. Then I have to protest for 30 years. And then I have to talk to this guy. And then we have to talk to this to get the permits to, oh, now it's integrated. But now there's still animosity. And then they go elect this official. Now we have to protest to get against that. There's just so much. Then you go in. Then you have to then you find out there's paperwork to sign to get the lease agreement, to get the special work permit paperwork to then be registered with this organization. There's so many different things. Then there's then there's just being different, not just being brown, but just you don't look different. Now there's so many. Then you have to learn how to talk to people. You have to learn how to. There's the insults and how to mitigate the emotional effects of the intimidation just from it. There's so many different things that you have to do because the reality is meaningless. And so everything is constantly crumbling from beneath you and you have to be forcing them into place constantly. And not all of it you have control over or enough control over that you can hold it together. And then even if you can, it sucks. You're not allowed to just enjoy what you're doing because you can't focus yourself on one thing. Whereas Ares represents a god, a perfect being, or at least a vast improvement being, where the universe is eucilionic. It's meaningful. It's not made of stuff that's going to fly off in any direction where there is space to move in. It's going to stay, even when there's space to move, it will stay put in the way that is going to be useful to your success more frequently. So you can trust in the environment and everything supporting you, allowing you to do what you're trying to do on its own. All you need to worry about is performing this task right here.